Morning has come, arise and greet the day. Dance with joy and sing a song of gladness. The light of hope it shines upon each face. May it bring faith to guide our journey home. A new day dawns, once more the gift is given. Wonder fills this moment shared together. The light of peace it shines upon each face. May it bring faith to guide our journey home. Open our eyes to see that life abounds. Open hearts to welcome it among us. The light of love it shines upon each face. May it bring faith to guide our journey home.
Good morning and welcome to Live Oak Unitarian Universalist Church. I'm Reverend Joanna. So glad that you are here, whether this is your first time or if you have been a member since the very beginning of this church. We are living right now in a strange time of isolation so that we can protect others. And it is so good to also have some connection, to be able on Sunday morning to connect with people who we know, or maybe people who we're meeting for the first time, to be reminded of our values and to be reminded that hope exists in the world. We just need to look for it. If this is your first time with us, again, a special welcome to you, and you may, after the service, want to go to liveoakuu.org. You're going to find a bunch of links on there that may be helpful to you if you want to get some more information about this congregation. If you would like to meet with someone after the service, we have it's in a Zoom room, but it's kind of like an online welcome table that you can stop by and ask questions and introduce yourself. And you can also sign up for our weekly email newsletter. It'll let you know everything that is happening at Live Oak over the next week. The beacon that is Unitarian Universalism takes symbolic form through the flaming chalice, and at most UU congregations, we begin our worship services and other gatherings by lighting a chalice. So if you have a chalice or a candle near, please draw it towards you as we light these together.
Find the stillness, hold the stillness, let the stillness carry me. Find the silence, hold the silence, let the silence carry me. In the Spirit, by the Spirit, with the Spirit giving power, I will find true harmony. Seek the essence, hold the essence, let the essence carry me. Let me flower, help me flower, watch me flower, carry me. In the Spirit, by the Spirit, with the Spirit giving power, I will find true harmony.
Good morning. My name is Carrie Krause, and I'm the Director of Lifespan Faith Development at Live Oak. Welcome to this morning's worship service. And now I'd like to invite you to get comfortable. Sit back, grab a blanket if you have one, if you need one. Make yourself comfortable. And settle in for a little story. This morning's story is taken from The Wind and the Willows, Chapter 5. Mole and Rat were returning across country after a long day's outing with Otter, and the shades of the short winter day were closing in on them, and they still had some distance to go. "It looks as if we're coming to a village," said the Mole. "At this season of the year they're all safe indoors by this time, sitting round the fire, men, women, and children, dogs and cats and all. We shall slip through all right, without any bother or unpleasantness, and we can have a look at them through their windows, if you like, and see what they're doing." Moving at will from one theater to another, the two spectators, so far from home themselves, had something of wistfulness in their eyes as they watched a cat being stroked, a sleepy child picked up and huddled off to bed, or a tired man stretch and knock out his pipe on the end of a smoldering log. Suddenly, a faint scent reached Mole in the darkness, making him tingle through and through with its very familiar appeal, even while yet he could not clearly remember what it was. He stopped dead in his tracks, his nose searching hither and thither in its efforts to recapture the fine filament. Home! Now, with a rush of old memories, how clearly it stood up before him in the darkness. Shabby indeed, and small and poorly furnished, and yet his. Poor Mole stood alone in the road, his heart torn asunder and a big sob gathering somewhere low down deep inside him. At last he gave up the struggle and cried freely and helplessly and openly, now that he knew it was all over and he had lost what he could hardly be said to have found. "I know it's a shabby, dingy little place," he sobbed forth at last. "Not like your cozy quarters or Toad's beautiful hall or Badger's great house, but it was my own little home, and I was fond of it." "We're going to find that home of yours, old fellow," replied the Rat pleasantly, "so you had better come along." They moved on in silence for some little way, and suddenly Rat was aware of a faint sort of electric thrill that was passing through Mole's body. Mole stood a moment rigid, uplifted his nose, quivered slightly, and felt the air, and without giving warning he dived. But Rat was on the alert. and promptly followed him down the tunnel which led to his home. It was close and airless, and the earthly smell was strong. Mole struck a match, and by its light, the rat saw that they were standing in an open space, neatly swept and sanded underfoot, and directly facing them was Mole's little front door. Mole reached down a lantern from a nail on the wall and lit it, and the rat, looking round him, saw that they were in a sort of forecourt. On the walls hung wire baskets with ferns in them, alternating with brackets carrying plastic statuary. Down one side ran a skittle alley with benches along it and little wooden tables marked with rings that hinted at beer mugs. In the middle was a small round pond containing goldfish. Mole's face beamed at the sight of all these objects so dear to him. The rat was running here and there, opening doors, inspecting rooms and cupboards, and lighting lamps and candles and sticking them up everywhere. "What a capital little house this is," he called out cheerily. "So compact, so well planned, everything here and everything in its place. We'll make a jolly night of it." He hailed the mole to come and warm himself, and then went and foraged accordingly, hunting through every cupboard and turning out every drawer. A tin of sardines, a box of captain's biscuits, nearly full, and a German sausage encased in silver paper. "There's a banquet for you," observed the rat, as he arranged the table. He made for the cellar door and presently reappeared, somewhat dusty, with a bottle of beer in each paw and another under each arm. Examining the label on one of the beer bottles, "I perceive this to be old Burton," he remarked approvingly. "Sensible Mole, the very thing. Now we shall be able to mull some ale. Get the things ready, Mole, while I draw the corks." In a very few minutes supper was ready. A lately barren board sat thick with the savory comforts. Mole and rat kicked the fire up, drew their chairs in, brewed themselves a late nightcap of mulled ale, and discussed the events of the long day. Mellow in the glow of the firelight that played or rested on familiar and friendly things which had long been unconsciously a part of him, he saw clearly how plain and simple, how narrow even, it all was. But clearly, too, how much it all meant to him, and the special value of some such anchorage in one's existence. He did not at all want to abandon the new life and its splendid spaces, to turn his back on sun and air and all they offered him, and creep home and stay there. But it was good to think he had this to come back to this place that was all his own. These things which were so glad to see him again and could always be counted upon for the same simple welcome.
I'll light the fire. You place the flowers in the vase that you bought today. Staring at the fire for hours and hours while I listen to you play your love songs all night long for me, only for me. Come to me now, rest your head for just 5 minutes. Everything is done. Such a cozy room, the windows are illuminated by the evening sun shines through them, fiery gems for you, only for you. Our house is a very, very, very fine house with 2 cats in the yard. Life used to be so hard, now everything is easy 'cause of you. And la 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 Our house is a very, very, very fine house with chickens in the yard. Life used to be so hard, now everything is easy 'cause of you. I'll light the fire while you place the flowers in the vase that you bought today.
So hey, you, how you doing? Let me start out with a reality check. This sucks. This, living through the pandemic. And if anything, it often feels like we're getting worse at this rather than better. Every day unfolding yet again with more trauma and more things to deal with. This is not easy. It stinks. I'm sorry if maybe what you wanted this morning was to see a little bit more dignity and a little more optimism. I promise. By the end of this sermon, we're going to get to optimism. But I think we first have to start with the reality of admitting that this pandemic, we were not prepared for this, and we are not having fun. That's the understatement of the year, right? They say that right now rates of depression and anxiety are absolutely skyrocketing. And I don't know about how it is for you, but for me, what's making it worse is kind of having a report card in my head, all the different things that we should be doing, right? Of dealing with, our jobs and marriages or partnerships, friendships, family, parenting, exercise, nutrition, house cleaning. And let me tell you, on that report card, I am getting a D at best. How about you? We are going through a traumatic experience. That's what this is. And we are feeling like we're failing it, right? Like we're failing the pandemic. Okay, first of all, let's start right there. Rip up that report card, because guess what? Pandemic is a pass-fail course. There are no grades that are being given at this time. Are you still here? Are you still alive? Then you're passing. And let's take a moment to celebrate that and have some applause. You were not prepared for this. No one was prepared for this. Even Dr. Fauci, who literally studied pandemics, was not prepared for this. So how can you hold yourself up to some sort of mental report card and expect to be getting an A for something that you never studied for? Nothing in your life prepared you for this. and it keeps going on, and we don't even know precisely when it will end. You are not failing. You are surviving. But I think that for some of us, yes, we're hitting that pandemic wall that has been talked about, but we're also starting to question whether just surviving this, is that the best we can hope for? Could there be more? Could there be a little less suffering? And dare we ask for it? Could we even find some moments of happiness? Well, we are Unitarian Universalists, a deliberately pluralistic faith, which means that we can search for wisdom wherever we can find it. Bible, Bhagavad Gita, Battlestar Galactica, Beyonce, you name it. So, religion-wise, if only there were a religion that dealt with this topic about having less suffering in your life, right? Buddhism. As the saying goes in Buddhism, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. I was reminded of this through looking again at one of those holy texts of Buddhism, the movie Groundhog Day. Yes, those of you who know me know that I have seen this approximately 856 times. I generally watch it at least once a year around Groundhog Day, and I did this year. It was again, I don't know how many times it was for me to have seen this movie, but this was the very first time for me to watch Groundhog Day during a pandemic. And boy, that context kind of changes everything. I'm not the first one to talk about the movie Groundhog Day in the context of the pandemic, because it does often feel that we are living Groundhog Day, right? Living the same day over and over and over again, so much so that we can even lose track on what day it is. But usually, when people are talking about the movie and the pandemic together, they're talking about the first part of the movie. They're talking about, again, the pain and the suffering of feeling that we can't escape this reality that we're living in. But I watched the movie, and it gave me exactly what I needed, because I watched the whole movie and I was reminded again about what happens when a person makes a choice to deal with the reality that they are living in and to stop resisting it. In case there is anyone who has not yet seen this movie, I'm tempted to say, like, stop and go watch it and then come back, but don't. You can stay here. But do. I really encourage you. Go find the movie and watch it. The story is that Phil Connors has gone to Punxsutawney for Groundhog Day, and he discovers that he is living in a time loop where every single morning he wakes up and he is experiencing the same day all over again. No one else knows it. As far as they're concerned, it is the first time for them to be having that day. And he goes years and years and years dealing with this reality. And he tries dealing with it in different ways. He keeps trying to change the reality, trying to change the outcome. He goes through periods of gluttony and hedonism. He goes through times of depression, and just like I think for 6 months, he's just trying to throw cards in a hat. I haven't literally done that, but I absolutely can relate to that feeling of just being numb and just doing something mindless over and over to pass the time. He gets very depressed. He tries to escape the reality through ending his life, and he can't even escape it that way. And at a certain point, he makes the decision to stop trying to change his reality and instead to live the best way he can within those limitations. And that was the part that spoke to me right here, right now. What might that look like? Every day to live within the limitations and to say, I have today, what will I do with it? Now, along with Buddhism and Groundhog Day, we can also look at other people who have been in limited circumstances and who still endeavored to try and find joy and contentment. And I think that a really good place to look is actually Scandinavia. Maybe you've heard of the term Hygge before. Hygge, the concept, came out of living within a limitation. Specifically, for the Danish, they have months of nothing but cold, often dark weather. Given the fact that they can't change it, they looked to, okay, how could they get happiness even within those limitations? And so Hygge has become, for them, a cultural concept. They say that Hygge is one of those terms that really is untranslatable, but it brings in the ideas of coziness and contentment and joy. It is sitting in a comfortable chair on a cold day next to a fire with a good book in your lap and a soft fuzzy blanket and maybe a puppy over there and a cup of hot cocoa and someone you love near. The senses are a very important part of Hygge. It's, tasting something good and smelling something that has been cooking all day, redolent of spices, and feeling something luxurious and soft, and listening to something good, perhaps the sound of beautiful music. It's about feeding your soul. And feeding your soul is what we so need right now. Feeding your soul creates mental health. Hygge is often associated with winter, but the Danes will tell you it is a concept that works all year long. It's about looking for just everyday happiness. So lying in a hammock outside or taking a long walk on a beautiful day and being mindful of everything that you see, or sitting around a fire on a chilly night outside, drinking something cold on a hot day. It's about mindfulness and fully immersing yourself, luxuriating in the beauty and the comfort and the joy that we can find. So what might Hygge look like on this Groundhog Day of a reality that we are living? I have today. What will I do with it? Within the limitations of your own life. What are some things that you can do right now? Again, taking every day, just one day at a time. Are there routines that you can set up or changes you can make in your home? Can you set aside some time to light the candles or read a good book? What is it that for you feeds your soul, that you can have during the limitations of this reality. I have today. What will I do with it? Can you ask yourself that question, but do it without shame or guilt or the feeling that you should be doing something else? Here's the thing. You're doing the best that you can. We're all doing the best that we can. And the best that you can, like the benchmark for that is not on your very best day and when everything is going your way, what is the best you can do then? Okay, then that's your best, that's your benchmark, that's your best for everything. No, doing the best that you can is going to change day to day. Yesterday, if I was having a good day, my best might have been much higher than today. Today, I may not have the capability to meet yesterday's best. But are there shifts in how you see things that would enable you to suffer less? I am now actively looking for more Hygge in my life. I'm trying to make the ordinary things a little more special. So like for the three of us living in my house right now, rather than just saying, okay, let's watch a movie tonight, what are we going to watch? I'm trying to have the foresight for us to actually talk about it ahead of time, maybe load in some good snacks and some other things so that we not only get the pleasure of the movie, but we get the pleasure of looking ahead, looking forward to something. Because gosh, I don't know about you, but that's one of the things I've missed the most is planning and looking forward to things. Keeping it real, it doesn't always work. Like in some ways, Phil Connors had it a little bit easier because everything was completely predictable. There were no surprises. There was not going to be something suddenly breaking that worked yesterday. I can get myself into this very peaceful kind of Zen state of mind. And then something happens with my family or my kids' school or something else, and boy, it is blown to bits. But I do feel like I have found my home base in myself, and I can keep coming back to that day after day. I'm trying to take everything one day at a time, but I am trying to stay in that day, not going on autopilot and not doing something just to numb myself. I've been doing a lot of numbing things over this pandemic, whether it is playing a mindless game or binge watching a show, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? We need some numbing, but numbing does not feed our souls. Numbing is a way of trying to escape our reality rather than living within it. Some days we're going to have a good attitude, and other days we're not. And that's okay. Remember, there's no report card for this. In Groundhog Day, when Phil tells the woman he has a crush on, Rita, all about it, she gets philosophical and she says, I don't know, Phil. Maybe it's not a curse. Just depends on how you look at it. And Phil responds with affection and sincerity and some snarkiness. Gosh, you're an upbeat lady. We're not always going to be upbeat, and we're not always going to be optimistic. But it's also okay to say, I'm not going to give up. I'm not going to let this situation robbed from me all of my days. The Danes say that hygge isn't something you can buy. It's a state of mind. It's a state of being. All people, including you, deserve this kind of coziness and contentment. You deserve happiness, whatever kind of ordinary happiness we can find given the limitations of what we're living. I have today. What will I do with it?
Spirit says sing, Spirits that sing, spirits that sing, spirits that sing, spirits that sing. You gotta dance when the spirit says dance. You gotta dance when the spirit says dance. When the spirit says dance, you gotta dance, oh Lord. You gotta dance when the spirit says dance. Spirit says dance, 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 spirit says dance. You gotta do when the spirit says do. You gotta do when the spirit says do. When the spirit says do, you gotta do, oh Lord. You gotta do when the spirit says do. Spirit says do, 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 spirit says do. Spirit says do.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning. Making our way through this global pandemic, I think, requires authenticity first and foremost. We can't just dream this away, and we shouldn't try to repress our very real feelings. Something that I've talked about before is taking time occasionally to have a pity party. Yes, I believe in pity parties. I think that it should be a literal thing where you set aside some time to think about what you're missing, to think about what you're grieving, and to give time and witness to that sadness. But part of authenticity also means that we don't have to stay in the sadness and the frustration and the bad feelings. So maybe what you also want to do is have a possibility party where you set aside some time. You can do it by yourself or maybe with those that you're living with or with friends via Zoom. Have a possibility party where you go around and everyone gets to name some possibilities of things that will feed their soul even within the limitations we're living in. May you go forward this week acknowledging, if you need to, that, yeah, this is not an ideal situation, to say the least. And may you also go forward with hope for possibilities and a heart that is open to see some of the ways that you can find happiness and contentment even now.
Soon the day will arise when we will be together, and no longer will we live in fear. And the children will smile without wondering whether on that day thunder clouds will appear. Wait and see what a world there can be if we share, if we care, you and me. Wait and see